And to wrap everything all off, or all up in a nice bow for this Memorial Day weekend edition of the Rolling Stone Gang, let us talk about racism! Because of course now everything is about racism. So, statues are now racist, history is now racist, children's authors are now racist, even the names of certain birds are racist now, if you cast your mind back to just about this time last year. Well, now we can add pianos and harpsichords to the list of things that are racist. A harpsichord, by the by, is the granddaddy of the piano. This story comes from classicfm.com. Classic FM, it's digital radio, 100 to 102 FM, the world's greatest music. Headline, Royal Academy of Music. That would be Great Britain's Royal Academy of Music. So we are talking about an old, established, venerable institution, very prim, proper, British, very serious, okay? That Royal Academy of Music. To decolonize collection as composer linked to slave trade. From the piece itself, pianos made with colonial ivory and sculptures of a revered composer who invested heavily in the slave trade are under review at the UK's oldest conservatory. Officials of the Royal Academy of Music have confirmed they are reassessing the conservatory's 200-year-old collection to free up space for student learning and to review its artifacts, quote, through a decolonization lens, unquote. Now, the composer that they are in the process of canceling is Handel, who is one of the greatest composers of the Baroque period, which comes right before the classical. You have Baroque, classical, and Romantic periods in music, as in those are monikers too for different eras of history as well. And Handel was one of the big, probably the most prominent, well-known name, at least in the Baroque period. Mozart, of course, dominating the classical era, and my personal favorite, Beethoven, being the king of the Romantic period. So, Handel is gone because he invested heavily in a piece of the British economy that is very unpleasant, one that we recognize as immoral today, but which was just accepted as the way the world worked back when Handel was alive. And in fact, as the way the world had always worked. Because, again, if you watched our last video about Nicole Hannah Jones, it wasn't until the 18th century that people actually started questioning the morality of slavery. Until then, going as far back into world history as you could, there always had been slavery. There had always been slaves and slave masters. That was just, you can get after it all you want, you can moan and rave and foam at the mouth, but you can't change the fact that that's the way it was, and that it wasn't until the 18th, 19th century that actually started to change because of Great Britain and because of the United States. So he is going to get away, but pianos and harpsichords are also now racist because, of course, the ivory and the ebony used to make the keys of the pianos of the harpsichords were obtained through colonialistic means when the British were colonizing Africa and India, etc. Meaning that the pianos and the harpsichords themselves, even though they're 200 years old, the people who helped get the ivory and get the ebony, the people who put together these instruments, long dead. Their families, in many cases too, have probably died out. But because we have to view everything now through the lens of racism and decolonization, now even these are on the chopping block. And it kind of raises the question, I mean, do we have on the ivory, is it, mined in Africa, ebony, obtained by colonialistic measures? Do we have that? Can we say with absolute certainty that it had? I mean, you just turn it over the side and you have the big made in China on whatever you're buying today. Is it the equivalent here? That would be interesting to find out. But I find especially fascinating, or ironic in this case, gang, is that I can guarantee you that every single one of these self-satisfied priggish wankers who want to destroy or throw into the basement these pianos, these harpsichords, these same wankers who are about to cancel Handel, I would guarantee you that each and every single one of them has a smartphone or a laptop of some sort. And what is so fascinating about that is that so many of our smartphones and laptops, either the whole thing or the parts, the circuitry and then the hardware that goes into these things, they're made in China, which means that they are made by Chinese sweat labor. Another thing to go off from that, so many of our smartphones and laptops now are powered today by lithium batteries. And do you know what goes into making a lithium battery? Cobalt, a metal called cobalt. And you know where a lot of cobalt is mined? The African Congo. And do you know who the powers that be in the African Congo get to mine the cobalt so that they can sell it to Apple and Tesla and all those other companies? Child labor. So the plain fact of the matter is that if you have one of these, like even I do, if you have a smartphone, which I do as well, I think I have a smartphone 12 that I bought, an iPhone 12, excuse me, then we have helped sustain child labor in the Congo. In fact, this was such a huge story that families in the Congo actually initiated a lawsuit against 5 of the world's biggest tech companies. This is from Reuters. Tesla, Apple, among firms accused of aiding child labor in the Congo. 5 of the world's largest tech companies have been accused of being complicit in the death of children, and the Democratic Republic of Congo forced to mine cobalt, a metal used to make telephones and computers, in a landmark lawsuit. The legal complaint on behalf of 14 families from Congo was filed on Sunday by international rights advocates, a U.S.-based human rights nonprofit, against Tesla Inc., Apple Inc., Alphabet Inc., Microsoft Corp., and Dell Technologies Inc. The companies were part of a system of forced labor that the families claimed led to the death and serious injury of their children. So the very same people, in other words, who are fretting about, oh my gosh, these pianos and harpsichords, they're remnants of our horrible colonialist past. These exact same people are walking around with a product that was made with slave labor from China and child labor from the Congo. These people have absolutely, and I would bet that many of these people, if you actually told them, wouldn't care. Do you think they'd get rid of their laptops? Do you think they would get rid of their iPhones? Ha ha ha, in your dreams. Because they want those things, they need those things, or at least they've told themselves they need those things. So of course they wouldn't, which makes them hypocrites. Or, what could also be a possibility, gang, is that they are suffering from some sort of pathology, perhaps. They know that their iPhones and their computers are made with this slave labor, but since they're attached to those, they will, in a sense, absolve themselves of that sin by looking at 200-year-old pianos and harpsichords through a quote-unquote decolonization lens so that they can stand among the woke saints on the way to glory. And just to make one more broader point, I mean, that's sort of the particular point. The minor point would be any sort of society that seriously thinks that pianos and harpsichords have to be looked at through a decolonization lens. Again, 200 years after their construction, it's really a society that has no business in living. It really doesn't. You know, all across the West, we are seeing a declining birth rates, declining economic prosperity, declining motivation even. The civilizations of Europe, Western civilizations, they don't accomplish great things anymore, whether that's circumnavigating the globe, whether that's going to the moon, whether that's constructing a transcontinental railroad, anything like that, whether that's creating a code of laws that then becomes the foundation of law in your country for the next 200 plus years. The Napoleonic Code is still the core of France's law today. The Napoleonic Code created by one of my heroes, Napoleon Bonaparte. We don't do that anymore. And why don't we do that anymore? It's because we have filled our heads with these ideological poisons like decolonization, which, when you get right down to it, is just another manifestation of a pathological hatred for your own civilization. Should you recognize bad things that your civilization, that your country did? Absolutely. Do you have to burn your civilization and your society down in order to atone for those mistakes, for those bad things, those evil things that were done? Hell no. And by actually going through the motions, by actually saying that you're going to do something, this unmoored from reality, as look at musical instruments through a decolonization lens, which is, FYI, just a postmodern paradigm that deals with power structures, etc. It's an attack on your imagination and on your rationality, as we also talked about last year. When you do that, you are signing to everyone that you are not serious, that your institution isn't serious, and that if a vast majority of your society actually takes you seriously and says, yes, this is actually a good, proper, necessary thing to do, then it isn't serious either. And countries and people, nations that are not serious are always consumed and or destroyed by countries and nations that are serious. That's just a little food for thought on this Memorial Day weekend. And with that, gang, I am signing off so I can start enjoying this Memorial Day weekend. So stay safe and stay free by daring to read, think, speak, and write. And I will talk to you again soon. Ciao.